IS management, we envision someone to oversee that shop. And in the flight procedure design, that's extremely technical, so we kind of viewed this as not something you would want to train right away. That would probably be just a service provision for the foreseeable future until you build that capacity. And this is not new. This is that's something typically you would contract out for a long while. Now, moving into the airports, we've talked about the big 4 airports that this contract would cover, and those are the functional areas that would go into the TORs. The air traffic control, like Colonel Ice said, is the tower controllers. The operations, who's going to run the operation, the maintenance. As a former air traffic controller, I've learned a lot about airfield maintenance. I thought that well, it's just relatively flat out there. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. As far as the training that is already going on, I can tell you at Kabul International Airport, they have got a very robust training program. And when we talk about the sequence implementation, I can maybe cover that a little better. But especially in air traffic control and fire crash rescue, there may be little to no prime contractor needed in those areas because they just might be finished by the time this contract lets. There are people in training in Kabul in weather and safety as well. So they're moving along there. They've got resources from NATO to do so. Now, the other 3 airports, more of a blank slate. There's been some talk about what the training is going on there. We're not really sure 100% what these other nations, what their goals are. So we're bringing all that together, and the goal would be to give whoever gets this contract, here's the list of who's in training. This person's had English training, which is something that's going to start next couple of weeks, a 4-month English training program at the American University, Kabul. But here's the list of the people, and here's where they are in training. And so the contractor will have that. And here, when I say contract details, we went back and forth. What do we call this? We don't like to say miscellaneous. It is sort of a miscellaneous. This is what's unique about this contract. That sequenced implementation is probably going to be something most concerned with this group would be most concerned with. In the contract, or in the TORs, you'll see the phrase, the contractor must consider a portion. It could be airspace and then Kabul, or airspace and then Kabul, and then the other 3 airports. It's going to have to be phased because for the airport portion, we're just not 100% sure exactly when those dates are. So that's going to have to be taken into account when you make the bid. For the airspace, the CNS, and the AIS, we're pretty much on firm ground there on when we can phase those in. It's that sequence implementation that's really about the airports. I talked a little bit about that quality assurance contract. What we envision is the prime contractor will come up with the standards that they're looking at the KPIs, get approved by MOTCA, that these are the standards and the KPIs that the contractor will abide by. And that quality assurance contract is just a small team to develop the mechanism to oversee, I said it again, to develop the mechanism to look and say, is this contractor meeting these KPIs, and provide a regular report to MOTCA. And finally, existing Afghan trainees, there is a provision in the contract that the contractor should consider. I don't even know why we put it in there, but we did, because I know if my contract was to recruit, train, and certify, I would want to, oh, well, these people have already got training. That's less time and investment I have to make in those people. And there's a couple of the trainees in the high sector. For the next steps, I'm not sure about how final we are going to be or firm on this, but we got to the 27th to submit your questions. There's probably going to be a lot of them, but we do have to have some kind of cutoff. And then we'll get some responses back to you by the 29th. And we envision some kind of a frequently asked questions so that the information is available to everybody. EOI is due the 8th of May and the request for proposal. There's a time period for that during that request for proposals for clarification. And there's a stop date, I believe it's July 2nd, where there's not going to be any more clarification offered. And then the MOTCA review. And before I go, I just want to go back one slide to talk about the existing aircraft or Afghan trainees. I kind of came with the same mindset as Mr. Cintron, because you heard, well, who's even going to train? There's not going to be anybody to train. But working with Doug on this English training class that he's put together, I got to go to the American University at Kabul. And I had certain expectations. I was like, well, you know, we're going to see people in the quad playing hacky sack, relaxing on laptops. So So I walk in, and that's pretty much exactly what I saw. Lots of young people excited about learning. I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but these are people that are also working full-time jobs and then going to school. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. Makes me feel really good about the future. And then we go over to the Civil Aviation Training Institute, the CADI, to look at what they had to offer. Same thing. And these are people just studying aviation. And you're talking on the order, I don't know, about 100 people just studying for aviation. So you're going to have plenty of motivated, qualified people to choose from. I have no doubt about that. And, you know, it'll probably be like us, too. They'll probably be pressuring you. We're not getting enough training. You need to train me more. So I fully expect that. And with that, that is all I have. You can ask questions now, or you can put them on the 3x5 cards, and we can answer them later at the panel. Whichever you prefer. You might give us some time to think about them if you ask questions now, but I'll be happy to entertain anything you've got off the top of your head.
Yes, sir. Major, if I may ask, what's the status of salary going to be, and how is that going to affect the contractor that takes this contract? Will that be an independent motive element with people, or will that be a motivational element for the contractor also to know?
Are you talking? Are you asking
for the controllers and airport personnel? Will there be an established salary criteria?
I think we would expect the contractor to go ahead and submit that. However, the contract, as I understand it, is set up so that as you start transitioning Afghans into those positions that were being held by contractors, for example, if you're paying a contract air traffic controller $100,000 a year, and then you...
That's not my question, so maybe I confused the issue. Are there going to be salary elements stated for the Afghan controllers so that when you are trained, they will want to stay on the job?
Oh, yes, yeah. Actually, Shaw, you want to...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
How are you?
The salary scale has been set up especially for the air traffic controller and all of those personnel who will be working in aviation.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we know one that's certified, we have paid them the salary to retain them.
Fine.
And they should be compatible to the market.
Well,
and we have to get it off.
Yeah, Sean, will that information be available to the contractors so that they know?
Sure.
That's all I want to know.
Okay.
Well, at least, very short period of time to ask questions based on what we saw there. And so when can we expect to see this presentation and Colonel Lee's presentation? When can we expect to see these actual slides on access link to a website or something? Because the tender is kind of vague. It's aggressive, but it's kind of vague. But this definitely adds a lot of detail. And I think to ask intelligent questions, we need to see this level of detail. So what date can we expect prior to the date that our questions are due? Okay, to see this.
Good.
I would go with the 29th, along with the responses to your questions, the 29th.
No, he's asking what they need information to base it on. We need to see it before then.
Yeah, what's it take to put these presentations on?
You know, the presentations you can do as soon as we have the session this month. We can do it tonight.
Yeah.
It'll be on tonight.
But which website are you talking about? Because if you are talking about the Moscow website, I can post it tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I manage
That'll
the
be good.
website from NATO.org. So
Okay.
give me the material and we'll post it immediately. It's up to you to give the material. Perfect.
Okay, great. That would be real good, because then that, as he was pointing out, that gives us time to understand this detailed information
Sure.
and finish out the questions in the time frame that you talked about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, can I ask some of the information, like that question last year about salary scale? You have some work that was done from 2009 onwards, establishing salary scales for every position within the civil aviation organisation. Has that all been scrapped and you're going to start again? Because the basis of that program that was originated from within the US Embassy, the previous advisors here, which I cooperated with, was to establish a structure that would enable to see that every position, every functional position within a civil aviation organisation would be established so you know what was going to happen. So has that table been scrapped? And going back to the question, for a contractor to say that you set the salary level, which is invariably going to be higher than the ministry levels, so you're going to have a huge problem on transition to keep people. Because if you take an example of what airfield firefighters are paid, which I know lots about, you will never retain people in the long term unless you have some substance that the work that's gone on over the previous year has some relevance today.
Sean, thank you. I know that Sean's working on this.
Jim, we are going to start everything again from scratch. We know the salary scale which was established for each position, and there is the same salary scale. I think you are part of that one. And now there is a salary scale which is compatible to the market. We have talked with the Ministry of Finance, and we will pay the salary to retain all of those students. First, they have to be certified, and we have different level of salaries for them. And right now, the certified air traffic controllers are paid the same salary which is paid in the market, which is paid in Pakistan, India, or in the region. We are paying almost the same kind of salary to them. And we are keeping in mind each and every student which is trained to be paid the same kind of salary. I hope that answers.
Sean, while you're up, the Minister of Finance has agreed to all this
We are in coordination
in
with
writing.
the Ministry of Finance. There is an internal procedure. This will be done. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good point, because we are moving very fast. So.
Yeah.
Sir.
Someone may cover this later, so I'll hold a different light. You showed a picture of the air corridors currently being used at the high and low levels. And you talk about a strategy, but does the contract have provisions what that growth looks like, or do you have someone going to brief about what the airspace sector look like for future?
What does the airspace sector look like?
Or the traffic, the airspace, the growth?
We've kind of broken down for the high airspace. We broke down because we do track, or the KCC does track what's military and what's not.
Sure.
And only about 70% of that high airspace, as of 2012, only 7% is military. So the rest, we don't anticipate much of a drop off at all, except for that 7%, and then we'll bounce back up. Colonel, I assume that'd be 3%.
So for internal government consumption, we developed some internal cost estimates. And I won't talk about those, but I'll talk about the planning factors that we use in order to develop, hopefully, somewhat of a realistic perspective on industry. So World Bank and various other organizations have done studies that show there's a direct correlation between growth of GDP and growth of the aviation sector in a national sense. So we use that as the underlying foundation for developing our revenue curves. And when you look at the GDP regionally of Europe, it's pretty stable, very mature economies. 1 to 3% is the typical growth rate of European GDP. The major component or major other region that is served by the high sector overflight paths is Southeast Asia. That has a more volatile set of economies. Their growth rate is anywhere from 5 to 8%. So using the weighted average, we are projecting a rough 3%. Most economists would snicker at our methodology, frankly. But that's what we use for planning factors. It's a 3% growth of annual traffic count for the high sector specifically.
And I'll have to look, but I don't have it. There is a section in the TORs that say what we will provide. And I'm pretty sure the levels of traffic, and there's a lot of historical data that we are required to provide. But I don't have it out here with me.
Most civil aviation regulators in this part of the world actually recognize the licenses or credentials of air traffic controllers from certain countries. In terms of the Afghani CAA regulations, do you have any restrictions in terms of where the air traffic controllers can be recruited from?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yes. No, what we're working on right now is procedures for validation of those that are trained elsewhere and a program of transition training. For example, right now, I think Colonel Lice or Major Malloy identified the fact that there's a lot of Afghans that have had all the academic training in air traffic control, and we can't get them to get their OJT training. So what we're looking at now is partnering with some of the neighboring countries to send those folks to get their full OJT training there, understanding that Afghanistan will look at that training system, validate it, and say, yes, that's acceptable to us, and then when they come back, they will still have to go through a small transition training to get certified in Afghanistan. That's the procedural process that we're looking at right now.
Is there no appetite to build Afghanistan's own framework?
Yes, there is, except there's, where do you train them right now? One of the issues is many of these bases are still military bases and are still military controlled. What the Afghans don't want to do is wait to 2014 to then start training people. That's the only reason why they're trying to get ahead of this, and we commend them for it, is saying, okay, where else? How else can we go ahead and make sure that when this transition comes, we have people that can assume these responsibilities? So right now, I think Turkey and India and some of the other countries are countries that the Afghans are communicating with to try to go ahead and get this OJT training, because for an air traffic controller, that's 18 months, you know, to get that full certification. So they're trying to get ahead of the game and say, no, we'll start their training now, even if we can't do it here. At least we'll get them trained somewhere, and then we'll validate that system.
Give them sort of a running start as opposed to, okay, starting cold, then you've got to wait for everybody to go to their formal schools. You want to be able to give some trainings right off the bat.
One more question, real quick. Has there been any thought from the colonel and from the JADM team and everything like that, and you as your representative in the Moshe area, of having NATO accept a transitional training element in some of their towers? I mean, that was, at one time that was on the table.
Yes, there's been thought to that.
Okay.
And I can't speak for the NATO position. But right now, those transition plans are not resourced.
Okay.
Well, it was a great morning, guys and gals. Really appreciate the participation. I'm sure as you all think about the opportunities that have been put in front of you, more questions will come up. Just to give you a brief view of what's happening this afternoon, we will have two panels. One will be a technical panel to further discuss the contract. The second panel will be a doing business in Afghanistan panel. We have experts for both panels to discuss some issues and to obviously field questions from you all, and that should be, I think, very helpful. We're going to go to lunch. Lunch actually starts at 12 o'clock. We are a little ahead of schedule again. The lunch will be at the rotating restaurant on the top. I've been told it's the 25th floor. If you go to the elevator banks, there's a special elevator that actually goes to that restaurant, and we'll have folks from our staff there helping to direct you and get you up there. My understanding is the restaurant rotates 360 degrees in 1 hour and 20 minutes, so if you want to be there for the show of Dubai, be there promptly and enjoy a great view. We did enjoy the buffet yesterday. It's really good food, and I hope you all really enjoy it. And please do, again, take the time to meet people that you maybe don't know yet or don't know well. We're really looking forward to seeing some strong teams come out of this effort, and that's really kind of on you guys in terms of getting to know each other and figuring out how you can work together to capture this great opportunity set. Mel, did you have something?
No, I just wanted to make sure that it was understood. You know, when we started with the Afghans on looking at the contract development and all these things, there was an issue of do they want to put out 20 different little contracts? Do they want to put out one overarching contract? And one of the things that they identified is that within Afghan law, one contract, if you get one contract, they can only sub 15%. So what they said is that you can get joint venture contracts where various groups, somebody that can do CNS, somebody that can do the air traffic, somebody that can do this, can get together and then do that joint venture. Then you can have one huge contract that way. And that is one of the reasons why we're having the extra time to allow you to communicate with each other and to do these things. And even tonight at the get-together this evening, these are opportunities to look at those joint venture opportunities with each other. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir. You referred to the new aviation legislation that being introduced. Is it possible to get a copy of that?
Of the what?
The new aviation law?
Yes, we can post that also.
You might be able to facilitate making bigger companies aware of specialized companies that would be interested in participating in some kind of a joint venture or at least a subcontracting role in a bidding situation. Could you give us a facility to post what we do and at least make it available to
I would be really happy as the Commerce Department representative to take your company profiles and distribute them to the attendants at this event. And by the way, any others who have expressed interest and who can't be at this event. So please, I'll take that on as Department of Commerce. If you don't have my card and my email, it will be part of my presentation this afternoon, but also please see me and I'll make sure you know how to get a hold of me and my staff. But we would be more than happy to be a proactive part of that teaming